Hi, thanks for joining us for this episode of Catching Up with Regina Meredith. Most of you are probably already fans of hers, but if you are new to her work, she's regarded by many as one of the figureheads for alternative news media, having been interviewing people for over 10 years now on all kinds of topics that affect us both personally and also on a global level. Topics like hidden health, politics, economics, but also a lot more esoteric topics and subjects as well. And today, it's been a while since we've talked to her, but we're catching up with her again to find out what she's been up to. And she also weighs in on the vaccine debate kind of hitting the social media lately. She also answers a question from a viewer about how she feels about Obama and maybe how her opinion has changed of him over the years. We also talk about Dave Talbot and the electric universe. She also shares a little bit about her breakup with her husband this last year and how that's affected her and how they've actually become better friends. I do apologize for the little bit of noise in the background. At times it gets a bit distracting, but Regina said she would get her computer fixed soon. I thought it was still valuable enough to share with you guys. And remember, if you have a question for Regina that you'd like her to answer on an upcoming episode, then send it in to regina@cafenamaste.com. And we'll look through the questions and find one for her to answer. So thank you for watching. Hi, Regina.
Hi, Scott. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Welcome back. It's good to see your face again.
Thank you. Good to see yours.
So a lot of things have been happening since we last talked. I know you spent some time in London recently interviewing quite a few people for GuyamTV. What was your experience with that, with your time in London?
Oh, it was good. I mean, I was married to a Brit for a decade, so I'm very comfortable there. I have friends there, and it's kind of like a second culture to me now. So the experience of being there itself was great. And then the interviews, they're running on Gaiam right now. That whole series of interviews is running on Gaiam.
I've been enjoying watching them, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty vast in its reach. Anthony Peake and the Philip K. Dick story was really wonderful. And then I just had a real soft spot for the Anne Andrews story about her son Jason, who was being taken from a very early age by beings from a different place. And
right.
That and his brother, who witnessed the whole thing, and the mother and father just were clueless for years and years. It's a very heartrending story of a very ordinary family that had phenomenal events happen and just couldn't take it in. And when they finally did, things really broke open for them. So I love that story as well. And then, it's a wide array of content.
Yeah, I forget the guy's name that you interviewed on the author, Philip K. Dick, as well. I really enjoyed that interview as well. There's been several good ones.
Yeah, Anthony Peake is the author. And
Anthony Peake, yeah.
I'm hoping to go back next October and do another round of interviews, 10 or 12 interviews. I have plenty lined up, including, I missed him last time, but my friend David Icke, who is really going into the nature of reality now. That's where he's putting a lot of his focuses on the nature of reality in a new book that he's working on right now. So it should be done by then. So that would be a good conversation.
Yeah, great. And what else have you been researching lately? I mean, you mentioned you had recently met, I think, Dolores Cannon's daughter, who's starting to come onto the scene, right?
Yes, I knew Dolores and had done a couple interviews with her. She'd done regression on me. I was featured in Convoluted Universe 2, though she changed my name. And, I didn't know what was going to happen with her work. And then I heard from a mutual contact that her daughter Julia is going forward with it. Julia was there alongside her the whole time. In fact, the last time I interviewed Dolores, that's when I met Julia. She was there as well. And so she is totally familiar with her mother's work, but she also brings in her own piece to it. So right now, she's just trying to get her sea legs, and she's a powerful woman in her own right. But having to step in and fill your own shoes after a woman as powerful as her mother, Dolores, was, is something she's just now coming to grips with.
Good.
So I'm interviewing her soon, and then it'll probably play later.
I was always fascinated by interviews with Dolores Cannon, and you just share a little bit about, if people have never heard of her name before, share a little bit about what you know about Dolores Cannon and her work.
Sure. Dolores was essentially a housewife, and ultimately decided she wanted to do. She was fascinated with hypnotism, and she became skilled, licensed in hypnotism, and started hypnotizing housewives for overweight issues and phobias and that sort of thing. And along the way, she started having these phenomenal events occur. In some of the early work, one of the women said there's someone with the name of, he looks like he's from a long time ago, and she kept trying to say Nostradamus, and it was coming out funny, and finally it came out Nostradamus, and she said, and Dolores said, "You mean the seer? That's from France, 500 years." And the being was talking through her hypnosis client, and she said, "Well, what's going on here?" Well, they said, "We would wish to tell you the true meaning of the quatrains because they have not been properly deciphered yet. Because in his day, of course, you risked death if you put out controversial information, which he was doing. And so he buried the kind of fundamental aspects of the truths in these quatrains, which were like riddles. And he said that no one's deciphered them yet, so I'm going to tell them to you directly." Well, okay, that's intriguing and interesting because the woman didn't even know who Nostradamus was, who was bringing him through. Then it came through another person. So this is when she started realizing, okay, things are getting interesting. The same being was coming through totally unrelated people. And this is also going on with beings from other, off-planet culture, extraterrestrials. They were giving her information. And she would go to another city, another client, and come through another client and pick up the exact same story they'd just been telling to someone else in another town. And she thought, okay. So ultimately she had ETs and Nostradamus coming through her through a wide variety of individuals, and she realized, and they told her, "We have selected you to work with. You're open, you're curious, you ask very good questions, and you're strong and can handle it." And so Dolores took it on, and she had this 40-year career, and the last 20 in particular, and of course she died very unexpectedly. She was 83 or 4, slowing down a little bit, but it was an unexpected death, and her daughter was left with her new book that still had to be published, and then half of Convoluted Universe 5, which turns out there's plenty of material for. So Dolores' work is going to continue, and of course she trained many other people to do that kind of regression, so the information will not cease.
That's good news. Yeah, I hadn't heard that her death was so sudden and unexpected, but I'm really happy to hear that other people are going to, and that her daughter will continue her work.
Oh, yes, it continues on. 2 books are being released. The one that she had finished but hadn't been released yet, and then Convoluted Universe 5 are both coming out this year.
That's great news. Something that's been coming up in the media lately, just in the last month or so, that I've really been paying attention to is what James Gilliland calls the lamestream media's attack on our freedom of choice, our sovereignty as far as making decisions when it comes to vaccinations. And it's this obviously organized attack on our choices, and it seems like if anytime somebody even questions the status quo on that, they just get attacked on all angles. In fact, they've shown that there's paid trolls on social media now out there attacking anyone that even questions that, and I find that really interesting. What's your take on that?
So funny. Just before you and I got on this call, I was just perusing through one of my magazines, The Week, which is my way of staying in touch with mainstream media. You get bullet points of everything because I can barely stand it, right? And I just came across this tiny little blurb, which I'm going to read to you. And I think it's coincidental this is coming out at the same time that, of course, we now have hysteria over measles, for one, and they're questioning people and essentially trying to bully us into vaccination. So here's what it says. All right, let me read this to you. Schools in some of Los Angeles' wealthiest neighborhoods now have similar vaccination rates to developing countries like Chad and South Sudan. How is that for putting us in a really healthy little basket with others, right? Okay. Right. So at the Kabbalah Children's Academy Preschool in Beverly Hills, 57% of parents have filed a personal belief exemption from vaccinations, as have 68% at the Waldorf Early Childhood Center in Santa Monica. I was just reading that, so it's not coincidental that you would ask that question. And so it's becoming, when even though these are elite little schools in an elite little part of the world, those are phenomenal statistics. It's not two parents in school anymore. 68%, which is not surprising in the Waldorf school. And I would like to see what the statistics at other Waldorf schools are at this point, too. I'm sure it's quite high. And other private schools. Yeah. And so it wouldn't be shocking to make the correlation that as these numbers are successfully growing, that there has to be an outright media, terror push on the public to bully us into vaccinating our children. To me, it seems like it might be directly proportional.
Yeah, it is somewhat coincidental, it seems like. But I had read quite a few articles on this topic and wrote an article on my site about it, about the seemingly really contradictory information coming from one side than you hear from the mainstream media and the drug companies and Western medicine. And I find it interesting, though, that the people that are asking the questions and actually doing the research, I find them to be more on the side of not being very pro-vaccination, and the people that just listen to their doctors and do what they're told, they tend to be the ones that are almost militant in attacking people for even questioning. How dare you question? And you're putting my kids at risk because you're not getting your kids vaccinated. And it's, when you really dive deep into it, it's like amazing how I can't think of any other word but ignorant it is to say that, because if you do the research, you find out that that's just simply not the truth.
It's not the truth, and you've done a lot of research, and I think it's kind to call it ignorant. Ignorant in the truest sense of the word means to ignore facts, to ignore reality, to ignore. It's not the same as being unintelligent or uninformed. It's to ignore. So I think ignorance is a kind term, but I think we might be able to look at, maybe even harsher terms when it comes to this particular agenda. Because if you use nothing but your common sense to push that many toxins into a tiny little body, in my mind is criminal. There is no excuse for doing that. They've long known the connection. There have now been, the CDC has publicly known about the connection and was called on it between vaccines and particularly high rates of autism among young black males. They covered that study up. It came out clearly showing the link. They covered it up. They've covered up a lot of links. And for anyone interested in that, they can go to my interview on Gaia, my latest interviews with John Rappaport.
Right, I've seen those.
Yeah, he did a really good job of talking about this. This is a flat-out agenda, in my opinion, to make us a less healthy, less vibrant, less thinking and inquisitive population into the future. And what the heck are the effects of having such high percentages of the population as autistic? Even if it's high-function autism, even if it's high-function autism with beings from advanced realms that are trying to make it through, it's not functional here on the ground. It's very difficult. Susie Miller and others can begin bringing these lovely messages through from high-function autistics that are actually, from perhaps higher realms, as I said earlier, trying to come, and it can't quite integrate into the physical reality here. That's still very challenging on a boots-on-your-ground level of families and trying to, create a future for yourselves.
Exactly.
It's challenging, and we're not seeing those rates go down, we're seeing them go up. So I think it's fraudulent and criminal what the news media and what CDC and the medical industry is trying to foist upon us.
To me, it seems so obvious. I mean, after the research I've done, this campaign, I find it interesting that a lot of people think that Western medicine, the doctors, the pharmaceutical companies are pretty much out there to protect our health. They care about us as individuals, and they just want to eradicate diseases and whatnot. And they forget to see that those are businesses. They care about the bottom line, right? And so it seems so obvious now when you do some research into this, what a media blitz it is to sell drugs and to get people hooked on, become customers for life. You know, if you research Dr. Mercola, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Suzanne Humphries, Dr. Suzanne Humphries, and calls the whole vaccine industry a big sham. I mean, just
think that when the Rockefellers created the pharmaceutical industry, they wouldn't take the stuff themselves. That'll give you a clue. Same thing. I mean, in Europe, for example, I know a lot of people trot this one out, but the royal family and the elite in Britain use homeopathy.
Yeah.
They don't turn to any of this garbage. They don't put that in their bodies. And look at the longevity they have overall and the good health that they seem to enjoy. Yeah, they have money, they have access, but it's because they're working intelligently with their bodies through natural systems. And when Rockefeller came in, when their empire started expanding out from oil into creating what is now the drug cartel, they took down with them everyone doing really beautiful healing work along the way. They took down Dinshaw and color therapy. They took down light therapy. They took down energetic therapy with Royal Raymond Rife. They took everything out, and they've been taking it all out since then when they were getting very, very high rates of success in everything from burns to cancer. I mean, the famous article that came out in the paper in the 30s in Los Angeles, it said an end to cancer, and all the dignitaries and doctors are sitting there in their tuxedos at this great event. And it was, because frequencies cure out-of-balance frequencies. It's really simple: light, color, sound, pure generated frequencies, radio frequencies of that nature. These things can all be very helpful. And they were all witch hunted. All their stuff was broken up, stolen, and they live in obscurity. And now it's underground. I mean, I know a lot of people that do all these things, but it's underground, and they can't talk about it, and I can't interview them about what they do.
There's so many tangents there that we could go off on that are so fascinating, like just the one that J.D. Rockefeller is really the ones that are responsible for starting the whole Western medical system, and yet he never went to a Western doctor. He always went to a naturopath.
Absolutely. He wasn't going to put that garbage in his body. Right. And a lot of the doctors in the know will not give their kids vaccines.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like Raymond Rife, what a fascinating hero. He should be hailed as one of the heroes of our society, and yet he was imprisoned.
He will. He'll be coming back. I don't mean as in reincarnating, but I can guarantee you there are things afoot right now that are really exciting, that are going to bring his work back. There are people working on not just his microscope, but beyond his microscope, behind the scenes right now, that are not ready to come out, and there are different teams. All of this is coming back. We're right on the verge of it. But we have to, in numbers like the people in Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, not just the elite, we have to educate ourselves and say, no, we're not going to do this. And the problem is obvious. In public schools, you can't enroll your child in a public school without these vaccinations. So much effort on the part of the parents to circumvent this essentially criminal activity.
Right, and the mothers that I know that have chosen not to vaccinate their kids, almost all of them say that their kids are the healthiest kids they know. They never get sick. They have a super strong immune system.
Let them crawl around and play in the dirt, get the natural organisms, they'll be fine.
Absolutely. It's just crazy what's happened with that. But I think people like Raymond Rife, like you said, are going to start becoming more and more known. Just like I think of Nikola Tesla. You know, he was suppressed for so long in his work, and now it's becoming more and more mainstream, and almost everyone I think has heard of Nikola Tesla and what he's contributed to society. But even some of his work has not yet made it to common knowledge, and how much that could change society. But
it's already there. Everything's there. It's not like we have a shortage of knowledge and technology to live, a much more kind of prosperous, healthy, holistic kind of lifestyle. The same cabal that runs, the gas and oil industry, runs the pharmaceutical industry, runs the media industry. It's the same with the banking industry, Wall Street. It's all the same players, and family members and extended family of the same players.
Right.
And so until we simply don't buy their stuff anymore, until we literally just don't do business with them anymore, that they'll remain in power. It's really up to us. It's an educational process. And yes, there are ways we don't have to do business with their banks. We don't have to deal with Bank of America.
I don't, yeah.
We don't have to. There are little private banks and savings and loan institutions.
Credit unions. And
taking money out of their system by not buying their pharmaceuticals. I mean, I didn't even sign up for anything. No Obamacare, no nothing. It's like I don't trust them. I'm not going to let that industry, which has nearly killed me a couple times, do it again. I won't. So I stay as far away. Now, if I were banged up in a car wreck where you need that kind of trauma care, medicine is great, and they make great advances. There's not like there's no place for it, but there's no place for it in vaccinating children, and there's no place for it in terms of chronic care, which is what most people suffer from, is chronic degeneration. They know nothing about
or
that.
General health, right? But as far as like trauma and emergency situations, I think they do have their place there. But
and I would go there for that, obviously. But other than that,
I think it's important, and maybe this is why it's coming to a head right now, is for people to take back their sovereignty as far as like personal health decisions, and realizing that their health is their responsibility. It's not their doctors, the medical industry. This whole concept of just doing what they're told instead of like doing their own research and checking in with their own body and seeing how different foods, nutrition especially, reacts to them. And
yes. And that's a generational thing. I mean, my father's generation, they believe in doctors. And even though the doctor sees them for 7 minutes, and the pharmaceutical rep has been around and said, everybody that has this condition, just give them this drug. And that's it. They took them out to lunch. This is the new drug for that disease, and you're going to have it pasted on you, whether it's right or wrong. That generation tends to believe in authority figures still, but by our generation and now the younger generations, no, not so much. So it's a matter of attrition on one level where we just don't support the industry anymore.
Right.
And totally education. And the thing is, if the system doesn't, if we don't have anything in place to help people financially access holistic doctors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, it's difficult because right now under Medicare and Medi-Cal and such, people can only afford mainstream medicine.
Yeah.
They don't have a choice. So the system's broken. So it's up to us to help each other and save that money you'd be paying in health care to Obamacare or any other insurance program, and then use it for your private practitioners in your town. That's another way to do it.
Absolutely. So I appreciate your optimism with that as well. I mean, sometimes it's when you look around and you see all of the issues that are facing us today, and it seems like we're on this brink. And I hear from a lot of experts, people that I follow, that there's all these things happening in the background that that the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the global elite are losing, and there's this uprising of awareness and humanity to overcome that, and then in the end the good guys will win. It's and I like to keep holding on to that idea, and I think for me, I'm optimistic as well. But what do you say to that? I mean, you hear a lot of things, people talking about these secret agendas happening in the background that are actually designed to defeat that old system, that old paradigm, and bring them down. But so far in the external world, we don't see a lot of examples of that. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I think we are seeing examples of it, as a matter of fact. Just the fact that Beverly Hills and Santa Monica have more than 50% of the parents saying, you're not vaccinating my kid. Now, what would that have been 10 years ago? Maybe one person, two people? 1%. So even though those are elite areas, again, California and the West in general leads the world in terms of any kind of progressive thinking, and there are little pockets like Boulder and other pockets.
Right.
Generally speaking, if we want to see where the trends are going to go in the future, you can usually look to California, which is what I love about California. I mean, granted, it's also a pawn for messaging out of Hollywood, etc., all these fright scenarios. It's both, but genuine activities happening there because, as they say, I'm from California, San Francisco, all the fruits and nuts rolled west way back when. And, And as a result, you're free of tradition, you're free of family ties. I grew up with virtually no family, just our immediate, insular family, nuclear family. And the advantage to that is you're not hearing the messages of your ancestors, which is good and bad, right?
Right.
And so if you're not hearing the messages of your ancestors, you can make your own mind up on things. And there is something freeing about that, and that's what California represents. So I think rather than putting down California, which a lot of people tend to do, I live in Sedona now, I think let's take the best of whatever is emerging out of new consciousness wherever we can, including just that. And so there are also beautiful little privately funded indie movies coming out.
Well, I think what you talked about is true, and I try to remind myself that, like Dr. Bruce Lipton relates it to biology and how the imaginal cells, we're those imaginal cells, the cultural creatives that, or the phoenix from the ashes, or whatever you want to call it, that it happens within. The system isn't going to change, but it's going to create we're going to create a new one from within. Like Buckminster Fuller says, you don't fix the old system, you create a new one, make the old one obsolete. So
those new systems are being created as we speak. Many. I mean, I hear about a lot of stuff on a lot of levels, and it's all, to me, very encouraging. It's happening, but because you have so much protest from the media, from people who believe otherwise and such, all the good stuff has to come from the ground up, and it is. It's happening.
That's true, and I think that's the challenging thing, is that you can't listen just to major media, because it's not going to be, that's not where you're going to find out about the things that are happening in the background. It's going to, because they want to keep the system the way it is, right? And to keep everyone in fear.
They're on the airwaves, so you're only going to hear one side of it. The other side's coming up underneath, and it's there.
Yeah, so I'm grateful for things like GaiamTV, and there's quite a few optional media out there now. But
there are. It started, so again, that's another thing. When Scott and I started Conscious Media Network 10 years ago, well, now 11 years ago, there wasn't much out there at all,
right.
Which is now everybody's doing it. That's just another indication of it, that things really, truly are changing for the better.
And people are waking up, right? We did get a question from a viewer that I wanted to ask you. Her name's Marcia. She's from Wisconsin. And I'm curious about this myself. She was talking about watching a show of yours when you did Conscious Media Network, about when you talked about Obama and your thoughts about Obama. And I'm curious, as well as what she asked here, about how your viewpoint may have changed, and kind of going over like the somewhat contradictory things he's doing. Whether is he helping us, or is he with the global elite and trying to take away our freedoms, or what's your viewpoint on that?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a viewpoint to begin with, and she might remember it that way. It was my editorials I used to do were called The Fifth Element, and in that particular one, I shared essentially what was a download. And what had happened was 3 weeks before he was first elected, I thought, I really don't know who this person is, and I can't stand politics, and because again, it's just stories they're creating. You can't really see any truth. So what happened was I went into a quiet meditative state, and I said, show me what you can, to my gut and whatnot. Show me what you can about this man Obama. I don't know enough about him. And so what I will now share with you was a download. And for me, it happens on, it usually starts with a dark screen, and then things start filtering in until I get the whole picture. And in this case, it was dark, and I could hear hooves pounding on dry ground, dry earth. And as the scene expanded, I saw horses' legs, and then horses, and then I saw a team of men charging towards something in battle. And then I saw a Genghis Khan-like figure. And then the words came in, this man has known power before, and he'll know power again. But this time he has to modulate the way he uses power compared to in the past. Now, if you look at Genghis Khan in general, that was a very controversial figure, not exactly as we thought he was, right? Everything was a mixed blessing. And I didn't know that at the time. Then I began hearing words accompanying it beyond that, which were saying he's here to really serve one purpose, and that was to really elevate the hopes of the people. And the idea of that is, if he does succeed in what his soul would desire to do, which is to make some significant changes of his own agenda, then the people would justifiably have put their faith in him. Either way, they're jacked up to expect something more than they expected from the Bush administration. Now, it also said he's standing on the shoulders of those who placed him in office, who they hadn't placed him, who will place him in office. He stands on their shoulders, and he's fully aware on a personality level that he owes these people. He will have to pay them. The soul will risk loss of life if he does not. And that his soul is perfectly willing to risk his life to do this thing and bring some changes in, and was brave enough to do that. But the personality is a whole separate thing. Yeah, since the unconscious or the superconscious mind. And that part, in order to stay alive, keep his family safe, and just continue living and breathing, he would have to carry out the agendas he was put in place for. And yet, either way, the disappointment or the joy of the people would spin into motion something new beyond that, a new system, whether it's a new system or something would be inspired from that. And, you know, that's what made sense, and that's why these kind of, who is this guy? He seems to do one good thing, then he seems to sell out, then something good, then sell out. That's totally consistent with what I saw 3 weeks before he was elected. Very enigmatic character. And on a kind of interesting level, I don't dream about presidents and public figures often, but he's come in my dreams a few times, and he's always stately, very respectful, and kind in the dreams. And in my son's dreams, he comes in the same way, and we're, what's up with this? He always shows up as actually a very refined and kind individual. What does that mean? I have no idea what that means. But that original vision, to me, makes sense. It did jack people up to expect more. Unfortunately, the recession and other things took the starch out of us to really fight when we saw things weren't going the way we had expected. That's the job of the cabal, is to keep us too lazy to rebel, so to speak.
Right, or in fear, where we're afraid to stand up to it. Yeah. Well, that's helpful. That explains it in a way I haven't heard it before, and like you said, makes sense of the contradiction. It seems like he's constantly.
That's what I got. That's what the download was, and that whether he succeeded in getting his own agendas through or did not, he had already served his role by simply showing up and putting people into a state of higher expectation. We needed that. Now it's up to us how we're going to react.
Right.
To doing. Yes.
That's where the choice point is, right? Yeah. And so, what do you see, Regina, in the next 6 months or so, as far as like what will be the challenges, or what we'll be seeing, maybe finally seeing the light of day, that will be somewhat hopeful and optimistic in the next 6 months or so?
Oh gosh, I mean, that I don't know, because I'll tell you, I tend to feel things, very kinesthetic, and I tend to feel things and sometimes see things too far out into the future, and so it's not really relevant, because I'll think, oh, I feel it, I can see something, I'll think, hey, it's coming up anytime. No, not necessarily. My timing's usually off, just like I thought that we would see a genuine something looking more like collapse leading to reformation of the economy years ago, and now we're still in the throes of it. We're still in the illusion. You know, people 24 to 35 years old are living at home, just like I foresaw many years ago that this would be not just continuing, it would become a more popular trend, as young people were having a hard time getting enough money together to even have a life of their own. This is all happening, but I was talking about that in 2006 and 2007, and we're just seeing the stats now. So I'm not a good one to ask about the next 6 months, because it might actually be something 15 years from now that I'm seeing. But when I can only tell you ear to the ground wise that, I mean, on every level, from science to the cosmos, fascinating new information is being revealed. On an economic level, there are things happening underground that are starting to bubble up that will cause disturbances, as I've said for years, but it will also help create a new system. So I think we have hope there, but we have to make our choices and make ourselves secure in our own right, so we're not afraid of the changes that come. And I've said that many times. I think on a medical level, there's one thing I'm aware of that's just beginning to surface. It's not quite solid yet, but almost, is going to put us back in the driver's seat with our own health by giving public respect to all of those wonderful pioneers and those picking up the work of the pioneers who are bringing back the holistic, truly healing technologies to the planet, and they're going to start being honored publicly. So this is really big because it will give credence to all of these modalities again, so people can have the confidence to say no to their MDs who are just trying to put them on yet another drug to mask another symptom, and get to the root of it, take care of it with really clean technologies. That's coming up for sure. There's a lot of good stuff coming up. I always remain optimistic because even if the ride gets bumpy from time to time, it looks pretty good in the long run to me.
That's good news. Yeah, and is that what you remind yourself of in the moment? Like if you see, a ton of chemtrails above you, or you see this in the mainstream media, how we may be losing our right to choose whether we vaccinate or not. Do you always go back to that? Is that how you reset your sense of optimism?
I am genuinely natively optimistic, and it's interesting because I'm aware of what's going on, and it makes me angry like it does everyone else, but I don't really tend to dwell on the anger. I did in the beginning, 10, 15 years ago, when I realized this is an illusion and we're being totally manipulated. For those who haven't seen the film documentary called The Century of Self, it's worth it. So you can see the beginning of the manufacturing of consent. It's critical to be informed this is a game, and we have to understand there are very smart, intuitive people that are countering the game. There are off-planet cultures helping with the game, helping counter the game, but it's up to us. It's up to human beings to make the choices. So yeah, it's a game. That's why I said I read the magazine, the week, because it's like, it's little bullet points just to find out what the rest of the world's being told. Then I try to ignore everything in it pretty much and go back to creating my own reality, because in the end, it's up to each one of us to do that. And that's not New Age speak. Reality, my home, my life, my circle of friends, is what I have created in my life, consciously. And same thing with you and everybody watching this. That's our responsibility, to do what we have to do to take care of our kids, even if it becomes more challenging. Pull them out of school. Do what you have to. But don't settle for becoming a slave to what we all well know now. David Icke was pounding about it 20 years ago. People, you're being manipulated. I think we all get it now. We're being manipulated. Don't buy it. Just create your own reality. Bring your friends together. Have some fun. Eat good food. Play games. Plant something. We all have the capability of doing that, and that's why I'm an optimist. Let them play their stupid little games until there is enough consciousness underneath it to simply push it out of the way. And ultimately there will be. If nothing else, through attrition alone.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. And it's helpful to be reminded of that too. I hear it from others too, but it's great to hear that again, that reminder that it is just all an illusion anyway, and it is a game that's being played out, and we don't have to buy into it. We don't have to fear it, and we create our own reality. So that's great advice.
And I think for me, it's understanding, like everybody else you speak to, my being is indestructible. My being is infinite. What I'm choosing to do with my body part in this lifetime is my choice. If I make a stupid decision along the way and I should lose my life as a result of it, that's okay. I'll be back.
That's right.
I'm not being cavalier. I'm saying I am an infinite being, as you and everyone else are infinite beings first. And if we really, the only priority in life anymore is to align with that voice. Whatever that voice is telling us is our truth. Just find a way, and it's not simple. It takes time. You have to learn to be in quietude. You have to learn to listen and trust and say, wait a minute, someone else said that yesterday, and 2 days before that, someone said that. I heard the same thing. Start paying attention, and your voice will start coming through. And as long as you're living by your truth, by your higher self's truth and voice, really none of this matters. Nothing else matters. That will take you where you need to go. It's just a matter of having the faith to stand up into it even if it seems counterintuitive in the moment. And my life has looked counterintuitive a lot of times, and I just do it. If my being is taking me in a direction, I honor that and I do it. And honestly, I love my life. It's not like I don't have a challenge here and there. I certainly do and have out along the way, but even the challenges can turn out good. I mean, I split up. My husband and I split up in the last year, and now we're even closer friends. It's beautiful. But to go through a disruption, just like everything else in life, to get to the good stuff and find a more refined position in it.
I hear that more and more, and it's, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great perspective. One topic I didn't get to, but I was really fascinated by, was your last interview with Troy McLaughlin.
Yeah, that one. That's one of the things I was talking about, of new science coming through that I'm fascinated with. I just did 2 hours with Dave Talbot, which he's really a baby version of Dave Talbot.
Yeah.
And Thornhill.
I just started watching his documentaries. The Thunderbolt Project? Yeah, that's so interesting view on the creation of our solar system, and it makes a lot more sense.
Totally. And Patrick Flanagan's the one who actually is the bridge between Thornhill and Tesla and our physical reality. Patrick will come in the studio with me anytime, and he can create the bridge between that electric universe and the human body and the human psyche, and that's what I've been trying to do, because David Talbot won't go there. He won't go there. I tried to get it out of him. I talked to him for 2 hours on camera. But Patrick will go there. And see, now that is a beautiful bridge and link for us. And I
agree. I love that guy.
So anyway, I'm fascinated with it, as you are. And as I said to David in the final interview, at the final moment, I said, in the end, it's all related. When that final little electrical signal goes from our heart, it's done. Life doesn't exist, and that's true of every living thing in all dimensions. When the signal isn't there, it's done.
It's true, yeah.
It permeates all things. Myself is the electrical field.
Yeah, the real you, yeah.
That's the electrical field. And that's why people who should have been dead ages ago are still alive, and vice versa. And that's why some young, healthy people, boom, they die like that. When it's time to go, the electricity is cut off. It's shut off, and that's the end of life. And as long as your soul chooses to imbue you with electricity, you're alive. No matter how old and disgusting someone from my life might look, they're not done yet. Their electricity hasn't been shut off. And so it's a very fine matrix of cosmic and consciousness and physicality and glandular. It all goes together. And finding the person that can articulate that perfectly is really what I'm looking for. That's all it tied together.
Yeah, I've only stumbled across a few people that are able to, like you say, articulate that in such a way. But Patrick's one of them.
Patrick's one of them. There is, at the Sedona Film Festival, they're going to show Yurka's movie. In fact, I have to go buy the ticket today, which is The Secret Life of Water. One time I was dipping in because I was asked to speak on the subject. I've forgotten why, a few years ago. And so I went inside and said, show me what you want me to see. And what it was showing me was that the bodies, you can't separate our bodies of water from the cosmos, and including the water in our bodies, that these impulses, electrical and otherwise, are all being imprinted into the bodies of water on the planet. And they're carrying this information and electrical cosmic charge that is feeding us on levels we don't comprehend. We can't separate ourselves from the cosmos, and the carrier of it is water. Not just in a sense of, homeopathy and imprinting water in those ways. It's going on every second of every day, from the sun, from the stars, from everything around us, from the electrical universe. It's charging our water so that it keeps us alive.
Right. I think I've seen that movie, and I didn't know it was Yurka's, but yeah, that was a great film.
Seen it yet? So, and it's showing at the film festival, so I thought I'd make that a priority and get that ticket. So, yeah, there's so much we could talk for hours.
Yeah.
Fun to talk about, but
yeah, just thanks for checking in with us again, and let us know what you're up to, and your, sharing your valuable perspective. So, thank you.
Scott, and thank you as well, because you're out there as a warrior doing your research and adding a lot to that pot.
Thanks, Regina. Until next time.